We're continuing. Actually, we're finishing this mimer in Likuti Torah, and the mimer is talking about salt, and why salt was necessary in the Holy Temple. It had to come along with every sacrifice. It had to accompany every sacrifice. Salt. Why salt? So the Rebbe explains, first of all, why it has to be salt, because that's what God decided. Like we said so many times, the essence of the Torah is that it's God's will and God's wisdom. We understand why God made, like we said before, that people have 2 legs. Why don't they have 7 legs? Why is the sky up? Why isn't it down? Why doesn't the sun just stand still in the sky? Why does it always move? This is what God decided, right? That's what God decided. God made the laws of nature. He made the laws. God decided whatever God wants. But God also wants us to understand as much as possible. And God wants us to be his partners. God created man so that man would be the partners of God. Partners of God to do what? To perfect the world, to make this world a perfect place. And the example that such a thing is possible, namely to reveal the creator and the creation, that was the Holy Temple. And the Holy Temple was a place of work. It was a workplace. It was the office. That was where the Jewish people got their work done. It is in the Holy Temple. That's where they got the work done, is in the Holy Temple. And not only that, but the Holy Temple was also an example for what every Jew is supposed to do all the time, in every place, even when there isn't a temple. And what are the Jews supposed to do all the time? They're supposed to perfect the world. And part of the world is the non-Jews. Non-Jews are God's creations. They're the choice of God's creations. The Jews are part of the creator. And the rest of the world, that's part of God's creation. The choice of God's creation are the non-Jews. Are the non-Jews, the human beings. It says in the beginning of the Torah in Parshas Noach that they're made in the image of God. That's why it's forbidden for a non-Jew to commit suicide, because he's made in the image of God. And when he realizes this, then he'll realize how precious he is, how precious life is, how unique he is. And when a person forgets this, then there can come in such destructive thoughts as suicide and addictions, and etc. So that's what we're supposed to do, to remind everybody that they're made in the image of God. And what is this God? Which God are we talking about, right? Which God are we talking about? You're made in the image of which God? It says in the 10 Commandments, you're not supposed to serve any other gods. Any other gods. And one of the meanings is there's all these other powers which are like gods and etc. And one of them is yourself. And you could think that you create yourself. Self-made man that loves his creator. So the Jews are here to tell everybody not to do that not to worship themselves too much, that they're very precious, but they're precious in the eyes of God, they're precious, in the eyes of the creator. So that's the whole idea of the Holy Temple. So one of the things of the Holy Temple is to reveal God in the world. In order to do this, there's all these steps. You can't just do it at one time. When it happened too quickly, it says at Mount Sinai that everybody's souls jumped out of their bodies. So too much revelation of God, it's like putting too much electricity into an appliance in your house. So it has to be done gradually, and that's the idea of the Torah and the Commandments. And what do? They start by revealing the upper worlds in this world. Start with, there's all these religions in the world based, I think all the religions, I didn't study all the religions in the world. I don't know if I studied any of them, but I certainly, am sort of versed in a lot of them. And they're all based on going to heaven. And heaven is really great. This world is terrible. This world, worst you can possibly have is this world. It's all confusing and all the disappointing and frustrating, painful. This world, no growth. So all the religions are how to get out of the world. And Judaism is how to improve the world, how to bring the upper worlds here into this world, to reveal this what the angels are going crazy about in the upper worlds, the godliness that they feel, that we should feel that also. And that's the idea of the salt. The salt mixes everything up. He says that's the idea that salt is called, the sailors are called malachim, the same letters as salt. And we had before that the letters for salt, mem, lamed, chet, are the same letters as cholim. Cholim is one of the vowels in the Hebrew language. It's a o sound, cholim, and it can sometimes be written as a little dot on top between two letters, a little dot. That indicates the letter cholim. Cholim is the highest. And it says it comes from the highest place, cholim, highest place. It's also from the language of lacham, to fight. It doesn't bring that down. So it's also the letters of lechem, of bread, and he brought in the previous paragraph, which we did not learn. We skipped it. And that on Passover, it's a commandment to eat poor bread, lechem oni, poor bread. Therefore, you're not supposed to put salt in it because salt gives it a taste, and it's supposed to be tasteless. So salt is a good thing. It puts taste into other things. Salt. And here the Rebbe wants to equate that with sort of like maturity. A person, when he is mature, he is able to look objectively at bad and at good. And he can accept what is good, and he can reject what is bad, and he can utilize what is good, and he can correct what is bad. That's the idea of salt. Salt, it's a taste. The word tam also means understanding. So older people have more understanding. So therefore, that's the idea of matzah. Matzah is poor bread. And in the beginning, it's forbidden. It shouldn't have any taste to it. The Jews ate matzah when they left Egypt. It's baby food. We talked about that last time. Just accepting God without any understanding whatsoever. That's one of the reasons why it was a little bit easier for them to worship idols. Even though it's no excuse, but they worshiped the golden calf. Because they were still. So this is, but afterwards, the Jewish people, when they received the Torah, then they could really connect themselves to God. That's what it says by David, Brit Melech, a covenant of bread, because this indicates, a covenant of salt, because salt is the ability to fix the world up, to go to work, right? A child can't work. You got it's a law against it, right? Working, taking child labor, can't do it. But older people, they're able to work and to change the world. That's already like Torah. That's the Torah. That's the whole idea of the Torah. When the Jews got the Torah, so they were more mature, and they could have bread which was chametz, and they could also put salt in it. That's the sacrifices. They could make the sacrifices that was salt and etc. Okay. Now let's do it. We're going to go over a little bit what we did yesterday. We did this yesterday also. We said before also that salt is the gematria, numerical value, 3 times God's name, 3 times 26. Alpizet, according to this, Yesh Lomar, we can understand. Yesh Lohavin, we can understand. Gam can also. Masha Perish Rashi, that which Rashi explains. Excuse me. Shasfani, that sailors are called malachim because mehapchim et hamayim, because they churn the water b'mashotot, with their oars. Kishamanhigim et the when they move the ship. Like I said last time, nowadays there's no more oars. You don't have oars in these big paddle ships, but there is definitely a big propeller or propellers, whatever, and they make the ship move. It is written, Hashem, so spoke God, Hanotin Biyam Derech. God makes a path in the sea. Hanotin Biyam Derech. This refers to, first of all, sailors. Ships go on the sea, and they can go from Europe until at one time there was no airplanes, right? So it was a big deal. you got on a ship, you go over the sea. It was very dangerous. You go on the ship, and you go, and that was also very, they say, lucrative. A person can bring, wares, the produce from far away, from India, from who knows what, and they can bring it. You don't have to go over land. You can go across the sea, right? You can bring them around to the bottom of the Cape Horn or wherever it is, and you bring things across the sea. Because to the degree that there was big sailors, there was pirates, there was this, because there was so much on the sea. So God is the one who gives a path to the sea. This also, of course, refers to how God split the sea. He split the Yam Suf. Afterwards, when the Jews came into Israel, with Joshua, he split the sea over there, split the Jordan River. Split the Jordan, they went across the Jordan River. There were several times in the Tanakh also, in the Talmud, there were some of the Tanaim, what the world refers to, that gives the derogatory term as Pharisees, right? The Pharisees were tremendously holy people. They had the ability to raise the dead. There's even the latter of them had the ability to raise the dead. Okay, what are you going to do? The world has been poisoned by these Christianities. What are you going to do? That's what we got. Okay, so it says that some of them also had the ability to raise the dead, to split the sea. It says that God is the one that makes their way through the sea. Okay, so we'll go back to the normal way. What's the way in the sea? You take a ship. You get on a ship, and you have sailors, and you go across the sea. Perish. Okay, let's look at this in a spiritual way. Everything there is in this physical world is as a spiritual source. That's one way to make this world into a perfect place. What to think, understand. If you just have ideas in your mind about what this world really is, this spiritual source of everything in this world, then that's already sort of like a holy temple. What's a holy temple? A holy temple is a building, and in the inner chamber of the holy temple was pure revealed godliness. And it wasn't that pure godliness was not revealed out, but just the fact that it was in the inner chamber that affected all the other places as well. Same thing with the person. If he has the proper ideas in his mind, so that affects the rest of you also. And where do you get these proper ideas from? Everything in the world. Everything in the world is being created by God, and everything in the world is being created by God by His Word, and everything in the world has a meaning. That's what words do. Words have meanings. So everything in the world is okay. King Solomon could understand the meaning of everything, but we're not to the level of King Solomon. But we do have Chassidut, and Chassidut, that is the salt. And this salt is going to put the right ideas in our mind, that we'll be able to start churning, start moving those oars and start churning the water and bringing the upper worlds, which is water, and bring it down here to the lower worlds, which is also water. This is the lower waters, and the upper waters. The upper waters, that's the spiritual pleasures in the Creator. In this physical world are physical pleasures in the creation. So we want to churn them around. We want to churn them up, so that in this world we can see the godliness inside of everything, because God's creating everything, right? Ki me'ayam, because the waters, here we go, now the secret part of it. Where does the sea come? Where does the ocean come from? It comes from me'yam, ocean, comes from alma diskasia. And this refers to all of the hidden worlds that we don't see, right? Look, open the book of Isaiah, of Ezekiel, and even of Daniel, all the other prophets, and they have these visions. What do they have, the visions? Maybe they just, they had a vision, they had a chalom, a guy's a dream, he eats something bad, he has a dream, a terrible dream, and it was something, you have a good dream, a bad dream. No, that's not what it was. The prophets really saw the true source of this world. They saw all the spiritual worlds. Angels are real things that really exist. Angels really exist. It says that angels are 3 times as big as the universe, whatever it means. It's a spiritual reality, but in a way it's more real than this world. It says one angel destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah and Sodom. So angels really exist. Okay, so here we go. So it says this is what's called the concealed world. That's the sea. She'em alavushim, these, I'm sorry, one second. 1 minute. Okay. Ki Yom Alma discusses, this is the hidden worlds. But Kodesh Baruch Hu, and God, notein bo derech, He makes it possible to travel on the waters, and namely, what are the waters? The hidden worlds. Sheyochlo and Hashamos, so that souls are able, lalo cham, to go up there, even in this world. Hainu al yedei asfinos, by means of ships. What are the ships? You have to have a ship. What's the ship? The ship is a levushim, the garments of Torah and the commandments. That by the Torah and the commandments, a person can make a successful journey in the upper worlds. Shabayam, that in them, al yadam mitalim biyam, you can go into the sea. Now, it might be that you don't know what's going on, right? Like the animals in Noah's Ark, they didn't have any window over there that they could look out through. So we're sort of like the animals. But the fact is that the ark is traveling on the water. What is this ark, as far as we're concerned? That's when a Jew learns Torah, but he does the commandments. Hainu ha'aliyah mi bia, namely raising up from bria yetzir nasiya to atzilut. Ideally, what it means is going from all of the lower worlds, this world, Asiya, that's the lowest of all of them, to the world of Yetzirah, that's a little bit higher, that's the world that says of the angels, to the world of Bria, this is an abbreviation, right? Bria, that's the world of the souls. To Atzilut, it says Atzilut, this is revealed godliness. Atzilut is another name for God. So we're going from the creation, Bria means creation, from all these levels of creation, physical, spiritual, higher spiritual, right? This is called the upper heaven, the heaven, upper heaven, to go to Atzilut. That's what the commandments enable to do, because the commandments come from above Atzilut. They're the will and the wisdom of the commander. God, he creates these heavens and all these things. So it says the commandments enable us to go into this level. Nowadays, I mean, when your person is alive in the world, so he doesn't appreciate this very much. There are big tzaddikim that do, and anyone that thinks about it a little bit, a Jew, this is for the Jews, when the Jews think about it, Jew thinks about it, then he can be tremendously happy, knowing that he is doing the will of the creator of the universe. This is a very happy thing, especially when you know that it makes God happy. You're doing his will, right? When you do someone's will, I mean, God set the whole thing up. It's God has sort of made himself like a person, right? We're made in God's image. So when a person has a desire and you feel that desire, the person is happy. So God is happy when you do his commandments and learn his Torah, and that should make us happy. So that's what it means. We're actually elevating when you do a commandment. Maybe you don't know what you're doing, but you're really elevating from Bria, from Asiya and Yetzirah and Bria into Atzilut. In other words, we're bringing the highest of spiritual levels down to this world, and we're making infinite meaning in this world, and we're also elevating the physical world to the highest level. We're making this world a vessel for godliness. Perish, that's what it says in the Birui HaZohar, a book called The Explanations of the Zohar B'Shalach. Okay. Sheyesh neshamos, there are certain souls, Hanikum, these are tzaddikim, that they're called Nuni Yoma, they're called fish of the sea. Al Derek, like it says, Minamayim Mishitiu, like Moses. Moses was one of them. How did he get his name Moses? It says it's an Egyptian word. Moses. It says Minamayim Mishitiu, from the water I drew him out. Who gave Moses his name? Paro's daughter. Paro's daughter was not Jewish. Paro's daughter was Paro's daughter, and she gave Moses a name. She drew him out of the water and gave him a name. Right? And it ended up that he grew up in Paro's house, and he was Moses was really the one that put in this crazy idea into Paro to kill all the children. And it ended up that the one child, that he killed all these children because he wanted to get this one child. That one child he drew out of the water and raised them up. And eventually this Moses that he raised up, he was the one who saved all the Jews and etc. Okay. So it says, but his name was Minamaya Mishitiu. He came from the water. Remember, we learned a mimer about that. He came from the world of Tohu. Remember? Shame that they are Be'etzem Me'alma Diskasya. That these souls of these tzaddikim, they come from what's called the hidden worlds. Neshamot Atzilut. Some of them are souls of Atzilut, pure godliness in this world. It says by Moshe, Zota Brachasha Baruch Moshe, Ish Elokim. It says Moses was a God man. And it explains in one of the Midrash which go on to understand this, but it says that from his waist down, he was a man, and from his waist up, he was God. Well, listen, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. We're made in the image of God anyway, so we already, as soon as God gave the Torah, he already got himself into trouble. Why? Because if God just stays up in heaven, so okay, that's where God is supposed to be. Gods are in heaven. But as soon as he gave the Torah in the world, and in the Torah it says that man is made in God's image, so that's very confusing. That already sort of, wrecks up our pristine idea of what God is. That God is just way up there in the heaven, and you have to have somebody or something or whatever to attach them. That's idolatry. That's where idolatry comes from. God is too far away. You have to have something in the middle. So the fact of the matter is that there are people who are really pure, godly people that can come to the world and tell everybody to direct everyone to the Creator. Right? Nobody worshipped Moses. Moses fed everybody in the desert for 40 years of bread. Nobody did that. This is the merit of Moses. 40 years, people got bread in the heaven for this manna. Came from Moses. Nobody worshipped Moses. Okay, but the souls, like us, me and you, that come from Bria Yitzir and Asiya, that these are lower souls. They're from what's called the dry land, the revealed world. The revealed world. We're separate, right? Everything in the sea is like included in the sea, right? The fish there, they live inside of the sea, so they're living in this hidden world. They're living there. And by us, we don't know what hidden worlds are. We don't know nothing. We're separate. We live on the ground. We're totally separate. Separateness is our existence. Our existence depends on being separate. After a person dies, they put him into the ground. But fish, the whole thing of fish is to be included. Okay, good. What's wrong with that is, well, the thing that's wrong with it is that if you look at it in a spiritual way, included means that we're in the sea. What's the sea? Pure godliness. It's just by us, it's called the sea because it's concealed. So to be included, that's really what everybody is. Everyone's living within, so to speak, pure godliness. So ideally, that's what the whole world is supposed to be. Not that we're drowned in godliness, that we're like fish, that they live from godliness, in godliness. But the way it is now, it's not that way. And the way it is now, we people live on the dry land. Our whole existence depends on being separate. And we depend on these, what's called big tzaddikim, the fish of the sea, to tell us what God really is. Lo yuchlu la'alot b'yam. Therefore, we can't go into the sea unless we have garments. And these garments are called arbin. That's called ships. Shem anios, these are ships, that they can go on the sea. What are the ships? The ships are the Torah and the Commandments. Look over there, etc. This is what it says, like Moshe went into the cloud. Moshe went into the cloud when he went into Mount Sinai. Look what it says on this in Torah or in Parashas Chayesora. I think we learned this. But and also Yesh Perush and others. There's Nosam Biyom. This is Malchut. Anotam Biyom Malchut. I'm sorry. What did King Solomon say? What did Isaiah say? Anotin Biyom Derech. That God puts in the sea, He puts a path. There's another way another meaning. There's another parish explanation that God puts in the sea, derech. The sea in this case is what's called God's malchut. God's malchut is the creative power of God. Shemamshich bo hamshacha milamayla, that the creative power of God purposely creates the world in a way that everything in this world seems separate. Well, another one is that God puts into this malchus, this creative power, that's also called the sea, because God's creative power hides over God, but that's the source of God's creative power. So another meaning is that God puts a path into His creative power, namely by me, into His creative power that makes more revelation in this world, namely Yesod. Yesod is the ability, is the sphira, which is right above Malchut. Yesod is also the word sod, secret. In other words, it draws down this aspect of Yesod, an inner connection of God's creative power to Zeranpin, God's emotions. Shemamshich bo, that this comes down from God's wisdom and intellect. Shachachma malubash orein sof, that there is the essence of God is closed there. It's explained in the Tanya in Paragraph 35. Because that's what the rabbis say, but Rabbos in Midrash Rabbah, Parshas Kedoshim, it says on the pasuk, Achrei Hashem Elokecha telechem, that you should go after God. It says in the Midrash, V'ki efshar labasar v'dam, is it possible for a human being, basar v'dam, l'halach achrei kodesh baruch hu, to go after God? Oto shkatuv, God, that it says, bo shkatuv, bo b'yam derekecha, that in the sea are God's ways, that it's impossible to go into the sea. You can't go after God. God is totally concealed, like the sea conceals everything. We can't go in the sea. But that's what Isaiah the prophet said. Vayita Hashem Elokecha. I'm sorry. That's what he said, that God puts a way through the sea. And also what it says, Vayita Hashem Elokim Gan Be'eden. That God made a garden in Eden, Sha'af Atem, also you, Ayin Sham, by means of the Torah and the commandments, is you can also make a garden in Eden. It says there's a river that came down from Eden and watered the garden. And that water the garden is we can make in this world also a garden. That's where Adam was. In this world, we can make a garden in the physical world. In other words, we can reveal godliness in this physical world. What does it mean? The Torah is called a tree of life. And that's also called the garden. Why is the Torah called a garden? Because there are 53 Torah portions in the Pentateuch, in the what is it? In the written Torah, the Kei and the mitzvahs, and also the commandments. The commandments are called trees of the garden. That's called the Pardes. Pardes, Pshat, Remes, Drush, and Sod. It's all contained in the commandments. In any case, by means of the Torah and by means of the commandments, these are the trees and the garden of Eden. By means of doing Torah and the commandments, then you can come to this level of what, as the question was, after God, you can go. You can walk after God. What does it mean? Into the sea. Bo b'yom, into the sea. Tarakecha is your ways. The Kayanim Yalu, that's what the Torah and the commandments do. They can cross over all of the secrets, all of the mysteries of creation and of the Torah and of God. And by means of this, Liyoslem derech b'yam, therefore the Torah and the commandments, they become like a path through the sea of godliness, holiness, spirituality, that we said before, that it's impossible for us, it's so real that it's impossible for us to survive. Too much, like we said on Mount Sinai, when God revealed himself, everybody died. It's too much of a revelation. But through the Torah and the commandments that God gave on Sinai from his essence, it's possible to go through this sea. What's this got to do with what we're talking about? We're talking about salt. What happened with the salt? We'll see in a second. Like it says, all the ways of God are pleasant. That's what it says. You should keep the way of God, etc., and etc., and etc. That's mahalchim beina omdim. That's the idea of the angels, that the angels, they are standing, even though the angels are in the spiritual worlds, but nevertheless, the angels, and we said in another place that the angels are up crying out because of what our prayers and our Torah and our commandments, that gives them energy to the angels. And so how do we do it? How do we go through this sea of the mystery of the upper worlds and of pure godliness that we can't take? How can we go through? Through the Torah and the commandments. That's a ship. That's the ship. But hasfino, the ships, balavushim, and these garments we talked about, Sarichim, Od, they need malachim. They have to have sailors. You can't just get on a yacht and go. You have to have a skipper, what a captain. You have to have sailors, that they conduct the ship, the Yam in the sea. Like it says in Zohar, Chelik Beit, page Memchet Amud Beit, says, Be'inyan Da'ati Chad Davra Biyama, that there came one commandment in the sea. We'll see what this means. Shehu Davka Noten Biyam Derech. This is the one who gives a path through the sea. By means of what? Shemamshich Bo'or Vashefa Me'orin Sof. That by means of the Torah, when a Jew does the Torah, so it draws down a light from the creator of the spiritual worlds, from the essence of God. Umamtik Gevurot Hagalim. And this calms down the raging sea. Azai, then the ships can go through it. So that's what, in other words, the sailors do. The sailors, in this case, they navigate the ship. They are able to navigate the ship through the waves and through the storms, through this, and even more, says the Rebbe. The Torah, not only that, if used properly, then it's able to calm down the sea. That's what it says in the rabbis when they say in the Talmud Yerushalmi, etc., and Chabad, and also another place. To see the rabbis, they knew all of the Torah. They knew everything there was, because the Torah is pure godliness, and that's where they were at, and it was just tremendously interesting to them. I mean, if you ever see some of these, there's some of these pianists, these master pianists. I've gotten into this watching a little bit. I mean, they can make concerts of like 2 hours and play everything by heart, the most complicated pieces, because they love it. It's there, that makes sense. So same thing is also great rabbis, because the Torah to them is like beauty. It's pure life and godliness, so they can remember everything. They knew everything there was to know. It says there were certain rabbis. I say there was the Ruzhiner, Rabbi Yisrael of Ruzhin, that nobody ever saw him learn. He never learned. He just knew all the Torah from birth. And it says that every Jew, when they're born, is that they know the whole Torah, but God hits them on this little cleft between you can't see it because I have a beard, the cleft between this, which is at first glance is totally unnecessary. He hit it, and that makes everybody forget the Torah. And they say that this rabbi didn't have one. Okay, anyway. So that's the Torah. It calms down the world. It's like and the commandments. It calms down all the confusion, so that it's possible to navigate and to actually travel and go to your destination. Why? Because all these hidden worlds and all this Kabbalah and secrets and mysteries and mysticism and all this is just part of the creation. This is not God. This is only part of the creation. The angels, that they are in the sea, they're flaming up to God. They don't know, they have absolutely no idea what God is, but it's tremendously interesting to them. They want God like an animal wants to eat food. That's what it says in the Yerushalmi. Anoten b'yam derech. This is that God makes a path through the sea, and it says over there, what is this path through the sea? This is from Atzeret until Chag, from the holiday of Shavuot, when we receive the Torah, ad Chag, which that's the holiday of Sukkot, when the Jews were traveling through the desert surrounded by clouds. From the holiday of the giving of the Torah until the holiday of rejoicing, it's called. That's the path. What does that mean, huh? We'll see. I know Al Yadei, by means of, now this thing of the sailors, that's malachim. That's the same words as salt. Just like salt sweetens up bitter, but it itself has no good taste to it, and it preserves things, and it can wreck things. Put salt on the ground, makes the salt, you can't grow, but salt comes from water, and water makes everything grow. So we say the same thing as the sailors. Sailors are called malachim because they mix everything up. That's what salt does. It starts everything churning. Hainu al yudei, by means of Shazai then nimshach derech havaya. Namely, because this let's go back to our subject, from the giving of the Torah until the holiday of Sukkot, which is the time of happiness, from that time, it's almost like 5 months, 6 months, but it's the second half of the year. By means of this, then is drawn down the path of God. What does it mean? Ki batzeres, in this holiday of batzeres, of the holiday of Shavuot. Shavuot that's the time when the Torah was given. Al Yedei, by means of this, the Torah, like we said before, that makes in the sea the path. The sea is the upper worlds, the path to the Creator Himself. Ubavoda, in serving God, what are we supposed to actually do with this? Is very nice Kabbalistic ideas. This is like what it says, mitzvos, that the commandments, sorichot kavana, you have to have intention. Namely, what do we say? The commandments in the Torah, that's like the ships. But you have to have sailors. The sailors, that's this in our case, the ships, that's the commandment. The intention that we have, what do you mean the intention of the commandments? That the commandment comes from God. And what does God want from this commandment? And what's so unique about every commandment? Well, how does it connect me to God in a different way? That's the kavanah. That's the intention. There's one opinion that says that the mitzvahs have to have proper intention. The intention, that's like the sailor. That's Chassidut. The commandments are the commandments. The intention inside of it, that's what we learn from Chassidut. That's like the sailor, that's like the salt. Melech, malach, it's the same word. When you learn Chassidut, you have the proper intention. That's like the sailor that takes the ship through the secrets. Hainu kamayim razal, like the rabbis say, she'akabel alav malchut hashamayim, that first of all, you accept on yourself the yoke of heaven. That's like eating matzah on Passover. You just accept God unquestioningly. Right? God creates me. I don't create Him. God gives the commandments. I don't give anything. Right? I don't even know how I'm being created. I'm just a big miracle. What God is, I have no comprehension, but I know that He's creating me and He gave the commandments. I'll do whatever He says. That's called accepting the yoke of heaven. And afterwards, you kabbalah of old mitzvah. And afterwards, you accept in yourself the yoke of the commandments. What does that mean, yoke of the commandments? Oh, Malchut Shamayim, that means Kriya Shema, Mesirut Nefesh. So you say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Echad, you give yourself over to God. I'm willing to give everything to you, God. Right? You are everything. And by means of this, then you can draw down what's called the path of God in the sea from above to below. That's when you accept on the yoke of God, then that draws down from above to below. Godliness, a blessing. What we do here, God responds to us. Right? We give ourselves totally to God as God reacts and gives Himself to us. That's called making the path through the sea. Because it says that the sea, namely the secrets, it says that, this Yom, the sea, it says, on tzitzit. Tzitzit is one of the commandments that there's supposed to be 1 or 2 strands that are blue. Right, two of the 8 strands are supposed to be blue. And blue nowadays it says, some people say we do have it, but most people say we don't. In Chabad we say we don't have it. Until Moshiach comes, we won't have it. But there's a lot of very good Jews that say we do. In any case, we don't. Nevertheless, the commandment is that on tzitzit there's supposed to be a blue strand, and when you look at it, you remember God. You remember all the commandments. Why? Because blue is similar to the sea. And the sea is similar to the heavens. And etc. and etc. And it's heaven. And the heavens reminds you of the Kisei HaKavod, of God's throne of glory. Shezimna, that when is it? When do you supposed to put on tzitzit? When is this time? Mishiyaker bein tchilat lavan. This is also a time when you're supposed to put on tefillin. Also, a lot of the commandments, when you can recognize the difference between the blue on your tzitzit and the white on the tzitzit, right? What tzitzit are these strands? It says the tchilat and this blue, I skipped the line, what's going on? Yeah, and this blue is similar to the sea, and it's similar to the throne of glory. And by means of this, then you draw down this path through the sea. Like it says, B'yom derkecha b'shvilcha. Then afterwards, that you've accepted on yourself unquestioningly, the yoke of God. In other words, whatever you say, God, I'll do. You accept on yourself the yoke of the commandments. Mitzvahs means the commandments, that these are the ships. Namely, these ships, then the souls can go through the sea. Then you do the ships. But therefore, the ships, asfanim, are called malachim. Therefore, the sailors are called malachim. And Rashi says why? Because it means they mix up. Shemahapchim et hamayim. They transform the water. This is like the intention of the commandments. Yesh lefarish the taruvutu shemamshichim derech biyam yilamayla lamata, that they draw down from above to below. Namely, they take the water that's on the top near them, and they churn it so that it goes underneath, and they bring the water which is below up. Liot biyam derkecha, and then by means of that, there can be a path through the sea. And like we said today, there's no oars or whatever, unless you want to take a rowboat across to this, and there is oars, but there's certainly other propellers, and it does the same thing. They take from above the water that's on the top, they put it below, and also from below to above. The people on the dry land, that they come from Alma Diskalia, us, that we depend on being separate, that we're able, la'alot la'mayla, that we can go up to be lam hasaga, that we can understand in the concealed worlds. We can get on the ship. But that's all talking about now. We had a little bit of a taste of what's it going to be in the days of the Mashiach. That's what we're learning Chassidut for. When did we have a taste of what's going to be a Mashiach? When the sea split. When God split the sea. How do they call it? The Red Sea. Sea of reeds, whatever. Kriyat Yam Suf. This is even higher. This is not just going across the sea on a ship. This is splitting the sea. Shenasu derech yabasha. It's not that you just take the upper waters and bring them down. It's that you reveal in the sea the dry land. In other words, the dry land is where everybody can walk. You can walk. Right? The sea, very few people go in the sea. And the ships, even on planes. Right? The most billions of people live on the ground. You can't live in the sea. You can't go through the sea. It's very difficult. In the future, and now what are we talking about? The dry land, that's this physical world where we don't know anything about God. The sea is where all the mysteries of God, but it's a little bit too much. Very few people can reveal it. That's why we have Torah and the Commandments, so that we can at least navigate through these things, even though we don't really understand. And there's sailors, these people who understand a little bit, and they can navigate. That's the people who know the secrets of the Torah. Learn Chassidut. But in the future, all these secrets are going to be available to everyone. In the middle of the sea is going to be dry land. Then, in Sarach La'arbin, you won't need the ships anymore. You won't need Torah and the commandments to have these revelations. Torah and the commandments will be eternal. They'll always be. But you won't need them in order to navigate through the secrets. All the secrets will be revealed. The purpose of Torah and the commandments will not be in order to go through the secrets of the world. They'll be just to do what God wants. As we're going to discuss, God willing, tomorrow, and we'll start something new tomorrow, God willing. We'll see what. Okay, let us now learn the Sikha. Okay, yesterday, if I remember correctly, and I hope I remember correctly, we finished. Oh, one second, I got to turn this thing on.